Good evening. We are live. It is Thursday night at 8:30, a little bit earlier than usual. That can mean only one thing. The UK Colts fans are back. And if you are a Colts fan or if you are a Bengals fan, then this is not breaking news. But to anyone who isn't and is living under a rock or is new to the sport, this is breaking news. The Colts have hired their defensive coordinator of choice. I'm going to murder his last name, but Colts' new defensive coordinator is Lou Anarumo. I'm sure my guest will correct me if I got that wrong. But joining me today is a man who has been supporting the Bengals for 40 years. He was saying, not far off half a century. Let's hope he keeps that up. And he has a mustache that puts Ned Flanders and Ted Lasso to shame. That is Paul. How's it going?
Oh, you threw me with that one, Harrison. I wasn't sure. I didn't know you were going to throw the old mustache. Well, I'm pleased, Ned. Hey, diddly doodly to you, Harrison, and to
you got a fan already.
And to that's Jamie, one of our clan. So yes, thank you for having me, Harrison. Good to meet you. Thanks for having me on.
No, it's
and you were bang on with the pronunciation as well. Better than me for the first couple of years of Lou's tenure in Cincinnati. I kept getting it wrong completely. So
it's tough because of the pronunciation differences we have just in the UK alone between different accents. So never mind when we start going over to America and trying to pronounce names. But anyway, I just want to say thank you for coming on. So Paul, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where can the Colts Nation find you when we come to play the Bengals, when there's Bengals news like this in our lives?
Well, we're on Twitter, naturally, at whoday_UK. We're also on Blue Sky, so Bengals UK on Blue Sky. We're on Facebook, Bengals UK, and Bengals_UK on Instagram. So we've got pretty much all the socials covered, I think. We've been going as a group, fan group, about 10 years. Well, I say about, but over just literally days over the 10-year mark. Last year was our 10-year anniversary, and it's been great fun. Like the community that you built up, Harrison. It's been really great fun to be involved, and just seeing all the fan base sort of converse and shout and scream on game day and do what fans do, really. But we hold meetups and all kinds of things. So yeah, it's been great fun, and long may that continue.
I might as well let Jamie run the show because he's already sort of put my first question out there. But it's nice to interact with fans. Lou will go as talent goes. When he's had elite talent, he can build these incredible schemes, but we've only had a handful of even competent players last year, and he's not the kind of coach to make things easy for more limited players. So yeah, we was talking a little bit backstage, Paul, and you brought up something really interesting. Was he sort of struggled? This is going to sound very simplistic, but he struggles to dumb down the game for maybe the not as intelligent players. Would that be a correct reading of Lou's tenure in Cincinnati?
Oh, it was a bit of a mixed bag, really. I'm not sure whether that's right or not. I think to begin with, he inherited a really poor roster, and a roster where it had the likes of Geno Atkins and Carlos Dunlap, who were superstars of the previous regime. Always difficult for a new coach to come in and kind of try and teach those kind of established guys new tricks. And sure enough, that first year was almost kind of getting rid of the guys that have been around for a while, and they did not replace them with anybody good. And the first year was really quite poor. Then they did make a real splash in free agency, signing the likes of DJ Reader and Trey Hendrickson and Mike Hilton, and they drafted a couple of good young linebackers. And suddenly Jamie's right, actually, to say that he did have a cast that he could trust and some really good players. And I mean, I guess you can kind of say that, most coaches will do well with a good cast of players, right? Yeah. But Lou seemed to really revel in that. And I mean, the common misnomer with Cincinnati is that maybe not discounting last year actually, which was a phenomenal offensive year, but certainly the Super Bowl year. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, etc., got all the headlines, but it was really that defense that carried us to the Super Bowl. And Lou was become the talk of the town. He was touted for a head coaching job. Lou Dini, they called him. The mad scientist, they called him. The Mahomes killer, they called him. We were kind of reveling in it, really, and he was having a great time. But so it was kind of a bit of a shock how things turned around and how quickly it turned around. It just shows you how things can turn around so quickly. One of the things that kind of disturbed me personally last year was, we signed a few new players, as all teams do every season, and frankly, they had a shocker, and some players regressed considerably and inexplicably. And we're talking mostly in the secondary, which is weird because that's Lou's speciality. That's where he's come from, a defensive backs background. But yeah, just kind of fundamental stuff like positioning and tackling and all that kind of stuff went out the window, and that was really weird. So yeah, these new players failed to get and we did see an improvement towards the end of the year, like 4 or 5 games to go. But one of our free agent acquisitions, Geno Stone, who'd had a complete shocker, who was good in Baltimore the year before and a couple of years before, but absolutely terrible. It's like monumentally bad. He suddenly started to play a bit better, and he was asked in the locker room why has there been this improvement? What is it down to? And he said Lou has simplified the scheme, and we all feel now that we can kind of go. So maybe there is an argument to say that he does have a complicated scheme, and it takes a bit of time to get used to. But we'll see. He was. I mentioned to you earlier. I watched the press conference earlier with Lou in Indianapolis, and he did say that he's going to make sure that everyone can understand what he wants and what's required of them. So maybe there's been a learning lesson there in Cincinnati. I don't know, but yeah, that was a weird thing. The fact that a couple of the players came out and said he's kind of really stripped it right down again, and he's kind of he's making things a lot easier to understand. So maybe there is an argument there to say that his scheme is complicated.
So I've got sort of 2 points I want to throw at you now, and from what you've just been telling me, the Colts defense, and as a Colts fan, we've had nothing to be excited about since 2018. Really, that was the last time our defense was nationally good. So we was getting recognised by the nation. Ever since then, it's sort of just regressed year on year. We lost Shaquille Leonard to injury, who had to essentially, he went to, I want to say Philadelphia or Dallas, but he had to essentially retire because injuries just got him. We lost key. The defense was neglected, I want to say, by Chris Ballard, our GM. So we're at a point now where we are at the bottom. We've got a couple of exciting rookies, Latu, who's had a good year for a rookie, and Jalen Jones, just to mention a few. Is Lou the type of guy who can, he's sort of got a fresh slate? Obviously, you'll know Isaiah Franklin, DeForest Buckner as the big names. But anyone who follows Pat McAfee or knows of Pat McAfee has probably seen the drama between him and Zaire. So there's a real divide, I would say, with Colts fans in general, and even the locker room. Is he someone with this, not complicated, but innovative scheme who can bring this back together? Or do you see there's going to have to be a big clear out? Is he one to get his own guys in, clear out everyone?
That's a good question. I mean, I don't know the Colts defense too well, so I think you would probably know more than me in terms of, but I think it's natural for any new coach to come in and, wants some of his guys in there. There's a couple of our guys that are out of contract, like trusted Lou guys like Mike Hilton and BJ Hill, who are still good players. Although I understand you've got a potential. He mentioned it in the press conference today that he's already got his blitzing kind of cornerback on the roster there. I think it was Kenny Moore, he said. So, yeah, I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? I think Lou is a good guy, but he'll want to make his own, you know, he'll want to put his own stamp on things. His scheme is quite interesting. He used as his base defense, he used the nickel 4-2-5 as the base quite often. The majority of the time, I'd say. But he's very adaptable, and he was known for his game planning. That's his strong point, his game planning. And also his halftime adjustments were a thing of beauty, an absolute thing of beauty. Like astonishing. Like we'd be getting blown out in first halves, and then they'd come out in the second half and they'd just boss it. And you'd kind of think, what the hell has he done here? Because he's done it again. That's why he was nicknamed Lou Dini. You know, another big feature of a Lou defense is that expect to give up a lot of yards. Don't expect, like, you know, it's a bend and not break sort of defense, you know. And what happened in that Super Bowl year and the subsequent year that when we got back to the AFC Championship game was that teams would march down the field, no problem, but as soon as they got into the red zone, it was forget about it. Yeah, as Lou would say, forget about it. You know what I mean? It was like it. I don't know what would happen. They would shut right down, and more often than not, they come away with a turnover. Turnovers in the red zone were one of Lou defense's speciality. So expect a bit of a roller coaster. But he's just really good at being adaptable, really good at changing formations and making adjustments. So, yeah, you know, the players have got to be switched on. And, you know, certain players won't be able to do that. They're very used to playing in certain rigid formations and systems. But I think Lou's a bit like, it's a bit of an Ajax kind of, if I can use that kind of association football metaphor. I wouldn't quite say total football, but, you know, players will be moved around, you know, and he's really good at, you know, screwing up a quarterback's confidence and just kind of producing a scheme or formation or looks or whatever they are that confuse the hell out of them. So, yeah, he's an interesting one. He likes to create chaos, does Lou. So, yeah. But it's interesting, we were talking beforehand. I think, you know, as I mentioned earlier, when Lou took over the Bengals, the talent level was just rock bottom. But I do think the Colts defense is better than the Bengals defense that he took over initially 6 years ago. So I think he's got something to work with there. And if all goes well for you, you'll have a great time with him. But we'll see.
I mean, I'll pin the positives to a side for now because you mentioned some, and trust me, this phase has been haunting Colts fans for years, and that's bend, don't break. The Colts have been more bend and break at the minute. You know, and so when you say he's a bend, don't break guy, under Gus Bradley, we was a base 3-4, usually cover 2. It was so predictable. Me as an armchair GM could read what the defense was in. And I always say to the fans and to people who I speak to, if I can sit there and I know what defense we're playing, a Joe Burrow is definitely going to know what defense we're playing. And
yeah, I don't think you'll get that with Lou, to be honest with you. I think there'll be a lot more variety, a lot more camouflage. There'll be a lot, and that's what he's really good at. And perhaps sometimes that kind of level of, you know, adjusting and changing in different types of not even base I mean, the whole kind of term and concept of base defense kind of went out the window with Lou, really. I say his base defense was more or less a nickel defense, what you traditionally call a nickel defense.
Yes.
He was big on stopping the pass and making sure he got two good linebackers in the middle, so a strong personality and a good player on the back end, as we had with Jesse Bates. Two good linebackers in Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt, or at least they were. And then we had an extraordinary player like DJ Reader up the front and Trey Hendrickson. So, if you like this, it's a traditional association football thing to say, but it's kind of counts, I think, in the NFL. The spine of that defense was fantastically strong, packed full of really intelligent leaders. And then, of course, you lose, lose someone as big as DJ Reader. You let him walk out the door, which was kind of, anyway. And then you let Jesse Bates walk as well. And then, it was a kind of a bit of a domino effect, really. And that's why we suffered. We didn't replace those really good players with really good players. We replaced them with significantly lesser players. But yeah, I guess everyone wants to know when they hire a new coach. We're going through that at the moment with our God, and we want to know how he's going to line them up. What kind of scheme is he going to use? How does he like to blitz and blah blah, blah 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 blah. Now Lou actually, and I guess it's the same with you guys for Lou. And Lou isn't necessarily a big blitzer. If he does, he's kind of quite creative. I say he'll get a Hilton off the edge, or he'll get a Von Bell coming through the middle from, he'll get a Logan Wilson or whatever. So it's not, blitzing doesn't necessarily come from your traditional avenues, I would say, with a Lou Anarumo defense. But yeah, I mean, if you're saying to me that Gus Bradley was as vanilla as they come, then watch out for Lou. He's going to be vanilla, but with some sprinkles in and some. It'll be like there'll be a flake in there as well. Do you know what I mean? So use the ice cream metaphor. Now, whether that will work, and the personnel's got to be right, as Jamie quite rightly said. We had good players, good intelligent players, who meshed with Lou more or less straight away after they came in, and obviously proved that you can turn things around very, very quickly if you've got the right players and the right coaches and the right scheme. So, hopefully for you guys, it'll be a good fit.
Yeah. So interesting. Blitzing is obviously my biggest pet peeve with our ex-defensive coordinator, Gus Bradley, was he could be very clever and very disguised and very talented in flashes. You'd be watching a game and, we're shutting out the 4-0 Pittsburgh Steelers, and he's dialing up blitzes you've never seen. All of a sudden, a Kenny Moore comes out of nowhere. Latu breaks it, and you're thinking, wow. And then all of a sudden, in another game, you're 32 points down against Jaguars and you're giving up 400 yards on defense. And you're like, how? For me, it was like, you might not know the stats because obviously it's not your team, but through the first 3 games, we're giving up over 1,000 yard scrimmage on the defense. And for me, that was like, how does someone keep the job through that? And, for Lou, and so I suppose my question to you, who's someone who's watched Lou, how did he maybe stay consistent at, probably an easy way to sum it up for Colts is, like I say, we could nearly shut out the 4-0 Pittsburgh Steelers, but then we could go and lose to the Jaguars and give up 400 yards. How does he negate that and keep that up and down to a bit of more of a calm sea?
I mean, that's the $6 million question for any coordinator for any team, isn't it? I mean, we were suffering in the same way last year. The defense must have given up probably a similar amount of yards, and it was just awful. And yet the offense was completely blazing anyone that they played. So it was a really strange season for us. But yeah, consistency. Oof. I mean, how do you achieve consistency? Oh goodness, I think again it's down to players. It's down to the one thing that Zach Taylor kind of said ad nauseum, and the word that he used ad nauseum when he came in was culture. And I think every coach uses that, the C word, as they come in.
Yeah.
I'm going to set a winning culture. I'm going to sort the culture out. No, man, it's like, yeah, all right. Yeah, the last guy said that as well. But Zach really did do that. We kind of took the piss out of him a lot, actually, and said, yeah, culture, schmulture. But he did, to be fair, and Lou was part of that. And I think the way he does that is, quite frankly, as you mentioned earlier, is evaluate the roster, and if no one's on board with what he's trying to do, you have to ship them out, however painful it is. We had Carlos Dunlap, right? One of the great Bengals of all time, beloved by the fan base, brilliant guy, good player. Didn't get on with Lou Anarumo at all. And the idea of benching Carlos Dunlap was like, what is that? No, sorry, what? How?
Yeah.
You know, a lot of fans were quite kind of pissed off with Lou when he first came in, because, you know, they were on Carlos's side, right? And Carlos Dunlap decided that he wanted to leave Cincinnati after all this kind of, you know, being benched and, you know, now in a rotation when previously he wasn't, you know, he was playing the majority of snaps, but now he was in this rotation. Couldn't take it, didn't want to take it. Staged his own kind of extrication process. He did an Instagram live thing where he just sat there and ate a massive bag of crisps because he knew that people. It was all very odd behavior. It was all trying to force the Bengals to let him go. He was just trying to behave as badly as possible so that they would let him go. So in the end, he got his way. But my point is, there might have to be some big decisions, you know. And then when Lou did get his boys in, the boys that he wanted in Cincinnati, it's quite a different culture to most. We do have a de facto GM, but the coaches are required to do a lot of, because we've got a small scouting team. We require the coaches to do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to scouting and evaluation. So Lou must have played a big part in getting people like Trey and DJ Reader and so on and so forth in the building. And suddenly he had his boys in, and then bang, it was, you know, it took off like an absolute rocket. So again, consistency, I think it is all about culture, whether you want to talk about that, you know, in a cynical way or not. I think it is. I think it's all about repetition and mutual respect, you know, all those sort of intangible things, actually, that as much as the tangible stuff on the field. And I think Lou will bring his own guys in. And I saw that Ballard, there was an interview with Ballard the other day saying that he neglected the defense a little bit. I get the feeling that that's not going to be the case this off season. So, I mean, you will know more than that. But yeah, I mean, I think consistency is really difficult to achieve, I think. And I'm not quite sure Lou did it completely, if I'm being honest, because I say it was a bit up and down. There were a lot, even in that Super Bowl run, and certainly the run to the AFC Championship game in the year after, there was a lot of games in that first half where we were getting seriously hammered. Like teams just opposition offenses just marching down the field. And it was just like, and then they'd either, you know, they'd manage to stop them for a field goal or whatever. But, you know, it felt like pretty much every game we were like 10 down at halftime or 17 down at halftime. And suddenly everything clicked in the second half. Lou, you know, the mad professor would get in at halftime, do his adjustments, and then we'd come out a different team. I can't tell you how many times that happened. But of course, the law of averages, that can't happen every time. So, but you know, I mean, even in like playoff games, the game against Tennessee, the first game against Tennessee, we absolutely just held Derrick Henry to nothing. And you know, that was a genuinely brilliant all-round defensive performance. You know, those games against Kansas City were just, you know, just befuddling in Mahomes, and just, you know, it was amazing. So yeah, he's very capable. Don't expect a super smooth ride, I would say. Expect excitement and, let's say, real roller coaster stuff. So,
we've been talking now 25 minutes. I'll get a few last points off you, and then maybe we'll expand a bit more on the Bengals and how you feel your season went and the ups and the downs. So from what I was reading and from the stuff I watched on the Bengals about Lou and about, I forget your head coach's name. Sorry, is Zach Taylor?
Yeah.
Right. From when I watched his interview when Lou was fired or let go, however you want to put it, for me, it didn't feel like he was happy with that decision from his body language. I don't know if you guys know more, or was there a bit of a power struggle there?
Yeah, I mean, you talk to the fan base, and the fan base are pretty split, I have to say. They love Lou, and I think Lou had a lot of credit in the bank still because of what happened a few years ago. Although, so yeah, I mean, the defense did improve towards the end of the year. About 5 games to go, it really sort of started to pick up. And people people do have the opinion that that Lou was made out to be a bit of a scapegoat, really. My own personal opinion, 6 years is quite a long time to be in a position, and sometimes a change is as good as a rest for everyone involved, Lou included, right? But I think everybody respected him. I personally really liked him as a person. So I was sorry to see him go. I think he's a good coach as well. He does, he's a people person, so he does get on with a lot of his guys. But he does tell it like it is. He doesn't muck around. So I think a lot of people thought he was a scapegoat for the team, and the majority of the blame should go on the front office because they replaced really good players, as I mentioned, like DJ Reader and Jesse Bates and so on, with pretty average players, really. And that's difficult to kind of, I mean, the year that was really the crusher, I think, was when both Jesse Bates, our 2 safeties, Jesse Bates, a really good young player, and Von Bell, a really good veteran player, who worked so well together, arguably the best safety tandem in the league in that year. They were both out of contract, and we honestly, as a fan base, thought that they would be able to sign one of them, at least. And the Bengals are famously, how should I put this, conservative and a little bit cheap. They've got their own wage structures, and they've got their own values of positions and whatnot, and they just do not budge. They just do not budge. And also, they've got their particular way of structuring contracts, which traditionally kind of means not a lot of money kind of up front, which obviously players want. So Bates went, which was disappointing because he's really good, and he's proved in Atlanta that he is an all-pro safety. And then they lost Von Bell as well. They weren't prepared to pay Von Bell. He went down to Carolina. So I think that really hit Lou, and I think DJ Reader's departure really hit Lou as well. So yeah, a lot of people think it's actually the front office's kind of fault that things weren't going well on defense. I think that a lot of people that argument is valid, but I also think something happened this year. I don't know whether Lou tried to apply his usual, was a little bit inflexible because, as I mentioned to you earlier, Geno Stone, who had had a nightmare start to the year, had come out and said, well, Lou is now kind of, changed the scheme a little bit and dumbed things down a little bit, and we were all a lot more comfortable. And it's like, well, actually, that should have happened week 1. Why week 12? What the fuck? Excuse me. Why now? It's like, and to me, and as I say, a lot of fundamental stuff was going wrong. Tackling was really bad to begin with. The positional play was shocking. So yes, I get it. I think Lou was a bit of a scapegoat, but there was enough going on there to suggest that perhaps a fresh start for all concerned was a good thing. So.
Okay, and then just my last question then is, Shane Steichen is a young head coach, very young.
Yeah.
This is his first head coaching gig. Comes from a Sirianni background in Philadelphia. So how the Colts set up, it seems to be head coach, defensive coordinator is the right-hand man, offensive coordinator is more in the background. Will Lou step up in helping Shane Steichen figure out what this head coaching is about?
Well, that's a good question as well. Who knows? But the structure that you just described is really similar in Cincinnati. So Zach Taylor, he's still a really young coach, but he was a really young coach when he took over 5-6 years ago. He was an offensive coach. He took on the offensive play calling duties. So he worked really closely with Brian Callahan, the offensive coordinator. So they were kind of like a 1-2 team. So Lou was pretty much left, if you like, to kind of to run the defense really. So I don't think Lou's got any problems with that kind of setup, because it sounds so similar to the one he had in Cincinnati, I think. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about that too much. And again, Lou will bring in his own staff. I'm sure he'll bring in a few of the boys that, I mean, we let go one of our linebacking coach, or the linebacking coach, James Betcher, who has DC experience. Mark Duffner, a long-term and veteran defensive consultant who used to be our defensive coordinator back in like 20 years ago, but came back to kind of be a consultant and to help out. So who knows? Lou will build his own staff there. But yeah, I wouldn't worry about the structure or Lou not being able to handle, being on a bit of an island, a defensive island. Do you know what I mean? I think he'll be fine with that. I think he'll be fine.
Yeah. And finally, 1-2 word answers here. One thing we've got to be excited about Lou, and one thing we should be wary of about Lou.
One thing. Ooh. One thing. Flexibility. I'm going to give you a few things, but real quick. Flexibility in terms of the way he game plans and the way he sets things up, and halftime adjustments, and not afraid to make changes in game. Do you know what I mean? So that's actually quite exciting and refreshing, I think. One thing to warn against, again, if he's just got to get the fundamentals right. And I think he was losing that a little bit. Like you said, it's all very well being bend and not break, but what if you'll bend and then break every time? And I think that is the key for him in Indy. So he's got to get the fundamentals back and right and get his guys around him. So yeah, I think that's what I would say.
Yeah, and I mean, thanks for coming on. Thanks for talking about Lou. It's nice to get someone who's experienced it rather than me just Wikipedia, Google starts it. It's a lot better to get someone who actually watches it and has the eye test.
Well, it's funny. Our new DC Al Golden has just come from Notre Dame, where he's kind of completely transformed the program. I'm not a college football guy, by the way, so I'm just reading what I read. But a lot of they got beaten quite handily in the national championship game by Ohio State, right? So a lot of people out there are going, "Oh my God!" But they got battered in the national championship game. We don't want that guy. And it's like, hold on a minute, did you not see how he got the team to the national championship game? How he completely transformed that program. So yeah, like you're right. You can take a low hanging fruit kind of approach to these things, but yeah, I think you'll enjoy Lou. He's a good guy first and foremost, so I think you'll enjoy that side of things, if not anything else.
All right, Paul, I'm gonna let you go there. It's been a pleasure chatting. I mean, we're both AFC teams, so hopefully it doesn't work out for the Bengals next year. Hopefully it works out for the Colts.
Likewise, I love Lou, but let's not be too positive about Lou. I hope he has a shit house in Indianapolis. Are we playing you next year? Are we? I think we are.
I think, to be honest, I've not checked, so I can't tell you.
Let's have a look. There should be some music playing while I search. I've got a feeling. Aren't you? You're abroad this year, aren't you?
Yeah, we're the Berlin game.
No, we haven't got you. We've got you in 2026 away. So, yeah.
I'll hold that.
Well, we'll see you in the AFC Championship game then, I guess.
Yeah.
Why not?
Paul, thank you so much. Thanks to the Bengals for joining. See you later. And joining me, as always, is a man who put Wales on the map more than Tom Jones himself, is Nathan. How's it going?
Good evening, Harrison. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. I was just talking to our guest, Paul, there. We was just chatting a bit about our new defensive coordinator. And yeah, sorry, I was just sorting a few things out.
Sorry.
What do you think of our defensive coordinator?
I'm gutted that Gus got fired. No, I'm joking. No, to be honest, I'm happy, right? I think, Colts fans wanted anything. we wanted change. We wanted, a fresh approach, and what better way to get that than to bring a mad scientist into the building, right? I think Lou is a really interesting hire because I think we will genuinely see just more activity from the defense. I think, I hope, gone are the days of just sitting in soft zone.
Yeah.
Lou loves, really messing with opposing quarterbacks. I've, remember being really impressed with what he did to Patrick Mahomes a few times. He's very much credited with the Bengals Super Bowl appearance. And I think it excites me for another reason, which is Chris Ballard has got to support him. So we should see some new faces on this defense.
New faces we should have. I mean, I say should have. We need new faces on this defense, I suppose is a better way of putting it. Paul was saying we need to get the fundamentals right with Lou Anarumo's defensive scheme. That scares me because our defense does not get the fundamentals right.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's been going through my head a lot this week. I, like many of us, I'm sure, we've all been tuning into lots of our favorite podcasts and, reading our favorite reporters writing about Lou. And the point that I'm not seeing is, what he's currently inheriting. This is a defense that missed the most tackles last season. You can't get much more fundamental than that, right? So yeah, things have really got to change, and I'd be very much expecting the Colts to bring in some veterans. Lou's had some stick media-wise last season for how slow the Cincy defense started, and I believe that was down to an element of the young players just not really being ready for it. If we look at the current Colts secondary, especially, that scares me as well, because outside of Samuel Womack, we really have no veteran presence. I can't see Julian Blackman being back next season. I really can't. So, yeah, I mean, safety, and I'm sure we'll get on to this in the episode, but, we must upgrade at safety, and we absolutely must upgrade at linebacker.
Mm-hmm. Joining us today is, I mean, when I first started supporting the Colts, I was told the Colts are a small market team. Nobody in England supports the Colts. And all of a sudden, I found a few people who like the Colts. And it turns out there are more of us, and it grows ever infectious. Joining me today is a man who is, God, I always get him mixed up because there's so many, but Colts GB is his underscore on Twitter. A big presence, and Nathan, I also believe he's a writer. Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, it's your death, mate. You introduced him.
Yeah. Ed writes for Join the Huddle. So me and
just
Ed,
a little podcast, just a little title.
Me, I think it's Join the Huddle. He can correct me now. But yeah, me and Ed crossed paths recently, and I invited him to the show, and I'm really happy that he's coming on. So look forward to getting to know him.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. I've had technical issues. I'm trying to get logged in. I'm like a granddad when it comes to technology. Sometimes I tell you, even though I work at home, I do this kind of thing every day. Sometimes, can just be a technical issue. Thank you very much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
It's all right. We are here to prove that the Colts are a big time and that we are all over the place. Massive. For those of us who don't know you or haven't seen your work or what you do online for the Colts, just tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe how you got to the Colts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, not a problem. So I've been watching the show. I think Nathan sort of gave it a good introduction. I've been writing for a new or relatively new website that started this year called Join the Huddle UK, which looks to sort of focus on each team within the NFL. And I asked if I could do some bits for the Colts, and I've been doing that all year. So just putting out sort of weekly columns through my X page, or Twitter, X, whatever you call it nowadays. I think it's always going to be known as Twitter, isn't it? But officially X. That I've been posting sort of weekly, just sort of thoughts and recaps, and just kind of trying to get the message across, about how the Colts are doing and sort of what's going on behind the scenes. Obviously, despite the record, we all know that the Colts can be a bit of a basket case off the field as well. So there's usually plenty of material to keep us all entertained, even after missing the playoffs in quite spectacular style this year, I have to say. But we can obviously circle back to that. It was kind of what we're gonna when there's no games, what can you write about, and how can you keep talking? And one of the best things about the NFL is that obviously it is a 12-month thing, even if the games are only played sort of September till, well, in the Colts case, first week of January. Most other teams keep going a bit longer. But within the time that we've managed to spectacularly miss the playoffs, there's still been lots to sort of write about and talk about, and just keep sort of banging the drum about the Colts and what we're looking to do moving forwards. We've obviously got the game in Berlin coming up, which is super exciting. New defensive coordinator. Obviously, we've got draft stuff coming up. Hopefully, we might do something differently in free agency this year. Who knows? So there'll be plenty of things that I'll be looking to keep sort of writing about. It's just an opinion-based sort of blog that we do. In terms of myself and the Colts, I've sort of followed the team for a few years. Sort of more, I've always kind of followed them, but more from afar, if that makes sense. I've got more serious about it in the last few years, I suppose, is the best way to explain that. And I thought, I got fed up, like a lot of people, and I think you said there at the start, Harrison, about when you first started with the Colts, a small team. Not many people are going to, follow them or talk about them. I have that problem, full stop, talking American football. Nobody I know really likes the sport. I am a little bit of a lone wolf amongst my friends. Nobody, they'll watch the Super Bowl, or they'll watch, I think like Thanksgiving when the games are on at sort of a reasonable time in the UK. They might stick it on, and I'll get a few WhatsApps. What does 2nd and 3 mean? What is why is he kicking it? All that kind of stuff that you just go, okay, yeah. So I started the Colts GB page purely and simply because I was kind of fed up of talking to the dog about American football and not having anybody to talk to about it. It was not. I use the word lonely. I don't mean lonely, but it is a kind of a niche. I think it's growing. I definitely think American football is growing here in the UK without a shadow of a doubt. But I still think it is, to have a conversation worth having is still relatively difficult. You don't go down the pub and talk about, oh, did you see if I went to the pub tomorrow night and said, anybody watched the Rams-Eagles game last night? What did you make of that? Jalen Carter's sack on Stafford, people would look at me like I'm like, what are you talking about? So for me it was very much a way to kind of interact with more people who like the game, who are knowledgeable about the game. I'm still trying, I really enjoy the sport, and like I say, my fandom's kind of grown massively in the last few years, but I'm still looking to learn more about it, plays, and I've never been one on sort of tactics in any sport, to be honest with you. My tactics have always been just score more points or more goals or more baskets than the other team. That's all you need to worry about, really. But, I do really enjoy the technical and tactical side of the sport. So I love interacting with more people who possibly have more knowledge than I do on it, and getting their thoughts and their takes. And since I've been sort of doing stuff with Join the Huddle, there's other writers who sort of follow other teams, and it's good to kind of chat with them and get their take and have a bit of banter. Unfortunately, we are the source of quite a lot of the banter, but such is life. I still believe things will turn around quickly for us. I mean, the division is in a division that is a basket case, we still can't win it, but hey, that's again another conversation. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I've been looking, I've enjoyed the sport for a while from afar. I love listening to pods on it, like yourselves. I listen to probably every day. I'm fortunate I work from home, so I can put a podcast on in the background whilst I'm working. So I listen to a lot of it. I watch a lot of the I still watch some of the Pat McAfee show. I've not as much as I used to, maybe, but I still watch things like that on YouTube. Like the ESPN stuff. I watch them at home, and I like chatting to people online. And it's been great sort of chatting to Nathan recently, and you guys invited me on to kind of to talk about the sport. If you want to know how I got into following the Colts, that's a
that's a key question. We definitely want to find that out.
So my story is really, really random, and I'm going to ask you guys afterwards sort of your thoughts behind it. Somebody said to me a long time ago, you should maybe follow a team for a place you want to go to in America. Which is why, you see a lot of people, maybe, Miami Dolphins. And I'm not saying that's the only reason, but, LA, New York, although my reason was, so I like I say, I've been a fan of American football for a while, but in my head, I thought to make it more, to really kind of get into it, you need to have a team, but, so... And it's one of those, I'm sure you guys know as well, a lot of Patriots fans, a lot of Kansas City Chiefs fans, it's like the equivalent of coming along and saying, I like football. Oh, yeah, European football. Yeah, I'm a Man City fan. You think, okay, yeah, of course you are. Yeah, I'm sure you remember Sean Gota back in the day, knocking them in when they were in Division 1. So my story, I digress. My story with the Colts, so my daughter was actually watching a TV program on Comedy Central, a long-running program called The Middle. I don't know if you guys have heard of that at all.
Is it Malcolm in the Middle?
No, not Malcolm in the Middle. It's just called... No, it's not. It's just called The Middle. It's like a random sort of comedy sort of light-hearted American, you know, the type that the Americans are really good at churning out, those sort of 20, 25-minute shows where, you know, your family, you know, relatively inoffensive, which is why I let my daughter watch it, obviously. But it was based in Indianapolis, which I think is what's called the middle, as in like the middle of America. And the dad was a huge Colts fan. And like there was always references to the Colts, and you know, no, I'm not doing that. You know, when the wife asks you to do something, the Colts are on TV, and you know, I've got my lucky Colts towel, and so this was on my TV all the time. So I thought, okay, well, you know, that's as dumb a reason as any other to support a team. Let's go with the Colts. And yeah, that's kind of how it kind of went from there. And yeah, here we are, sort of however many years down the line, and wasting many a weekend, wasting lots of money, time, effort, emotional support, but it's a lot of fun. You know, I still genuinely, although it was a bit of a difficult season, I remain relatively positive up until the end. I think the writing was on the wall towards the end, as much as I tried to convince myself otherwise. When we went into Denver, yeah, I mean that. I'm always, you know, what were we up by 10 points? Were we up when Taylor went over the line and dropped the ball? Would have, or were we? It was, you know. Oh man, that one stung for a little while. But you know, I wasn't confident going into that game, to be perfectly honest with you. So the fact that we, you know, I mean, and then we capitulated in amazing style. I mean, unbelievable when you think about it. But no, I'm still relatively positive. I think I was just hearing you guys chatting about, and I was watching the show before. It was really interesting listening from a Bengals perspective about Lou Anarumo coming in. I'm kind of okay with it. I know, I think Nathan, you said you maybe were not so much.
No, I was joking. So it's a lot. Me and Harrison, we chair the Gus Bradley fan club in the UK. We despise Gus Bradley and his boring scheme. So there's a lot of YouTube content of us, you know, setting the world to rights there. So that was just a little personal joke. I'm happy with Lou. But back to you. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Back to you.
No, I think, I mean, were you not a fan of the Gus Bradley, everybody sort of stand still defense and hope that somebody might drop the ball or something, you know, magically might happen?
So Ed, I have a rule when I'm watching the Colts, and I've told this to Nathan and others. If I know what defense we're running, then when we come up the lights against Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes, and I know what defense we're in, then we are in trouble.
That's, I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, I hear you. I mean, who'd have thought giving up 7-8 yards per play was a good sort of defensive scheme?
Bend don't break.
You know, bend don't break. Honestly, if I hear that phrase anymore, I think I'm gonna throw something. So you know, I am excited. I say excited. You know, I'm intrigued at what Lou Anarumo can do. I know it went a bit stale towards the end with the Bengals, and you know, I was looking. Obviously, not spending a huge amount of my life watching the Bengals play. You know, I watch them. You know, sort of periodically when they're on Red Zone, maybe, or you know, if they're in a prime time game, which they tend to be in a lot more than we are. But when I looked at the stats, I was a little bit concerned about how close they maybe were to us in a lot of the metrics, sort of, you know. But listen, I think, you know, they had a big talent drain, didn't they? And I think it went south. And as it was Paul, wasn't it, from the but you know, I think 6 years is a long time. Sometimes, you know, a change is as good as a rest, isn't it? You know, it could very well be that everybody needs some fresh ideas, and I'm hoping that that's what he's going to bring to what I believe is there is talent on our roster on defense in areas. There's definitely huge areas that need improvement, no doubts about that. But there are some undoubtedly good players there, and I am still Latu number one fan club. I think he is going to be an exceptional player. I really do believe that. You know, so I'm fairly confident. A lot of it depends on how the Colts rebuild that roster. I think, you know, Ballard has said we're not going to do this, make the same mistakes again. Let's wait and see. You know, let's wait and see. You know, he said, you know, words are cheap. I've got a saying in my life that actions speak louder than words. You know, we can all talk the talk. Let's see what happens. And I think there's different ways to go. I do think, interestingly, I was wondering to myself and my dog, the only other person who listens to me talk about the Colts, is will Lou Anarumo coming in, will that potentially change our approach in the draft? Because I think you guys will see the same content I do. Every man and their dog knows that we're after a weapon sort of over the middle of the field. A tight end is a glaring need on our offense, and this is a good draft to go and get one. And I think pretty much every draft I've seen has us taken Tyler Warren in the first round. I wonder with Lou Anarumo coming in and us having serious needs on defense, if he's going to be whispering in the powers that be and saying, are we going to maybe look at, you know, a defensive player in the first round? And as it's a deep tight end class, will that maybe mean that we look for somebody later on, you know, like somebody who I quite like, by the way, just going to throw a name out there now, is Gunnar Helm at Texas. I quite like him. And I wouldn't be my first choice, but I wouldn't be against that, if that makes sense. If we were going to go down that route of building out defense in the first and second rounds. But I was just, you know, I'm just interested to see if maybe that does change the approach. It might not, but it will be interesting because he's potentially, and you alluded to it, Harrison, when you were talking about Shane Steichen is a relatively young coach. Lou Anarumo is potentially the grown up in the room. No disrespect meant by that. You know, he's got more experience. Yeah. Is he going to potentially have more of Shane Steichen's ear? You know, is that going to potentially change? And then, you know, obviously that goes up to Chris Ballard when we get round to draft. So it'll be interesting to see how that changes the dynamic, I think, within that office, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So for me, Ed, and my question to you is, you know, and I'll let Nathan ask a question afterwards, but I'll go to you first, Ed. Let's review the season in simplistic terms. It was a circus. It was an absolute circus it was like it was Anthony Richardson hitting a 67-yarder off his back foot to Pierce, and then it was tap out gate, then it was Zaire Franklin and Pat McAfee Civil War, and then it was and then it's Jim Irsay saying we want to know in 2025. We're not in the playoffs, Jim. What are you on about? Maybe in like a few sentences. I'll go to you first, Ed, and then you, Nathan. Like, how do you sum up this season to someone who hasn't heard of the Colts?
Tragic comedy probably is the best way that I would go with it. I think you've hit the nail on the head there with the kind of. I'd also like to throw in the Denver game with AD Mitchell's trick play, which I still will have nightmares about for the rest of my life. I mean, it's one of those that you watch it, and I remember watching it, and I just sat there, and I, you know, you just look at something, think, oh my goodness, like what are you doing? Tragic comedy. You know, for me, I went into the season with hopes of, I genuinely thought we could be a playoff team this year. And I thought a playoff challenge and progression for Anthony Richardson. That's what I was looking for this year. And I think we failed on both counts, if you want my honest opinion.
Yeah. And Nathan?
I mean, I think my most recent piece, shameless self-plug, kind of touches on my opinions, as in it's just complete mediocrity across the board. And I tried to remember some of the lines you were giving us in your intro, Ed, and one that stood out for me was the agreement of with Paul from the Bengals crew of, you know, 6 years is too long. I think 9 years is too long.
Yeah.
And Chris Ballard gone. How is he not like working in McDonald's now? I mean, yeah, it's just complete mediocrity. It's like a diva club. It almost felt a bit like a reality show at times this year. And Harrison and I've kind of reflected on this quite a lot, and it's quite painful when you think of it. Especially now when the playoffs begin and you start seeing the playoff teams, and you look at the rosters, and like the Colts have no superstars. We maybe have one in DeForest Buckner.
Yeah,
that's it. And Quentin Nelson, of course, right? Q's a stud and could go win bowls with any actually well-run team. But yeah, Harrison, mediocrity is. We should rename ourselves to that.
Nathan, I'm just going to let you ask a couple of questions now because I'm just going to go get a glass of water.
Yeah, totally fine, man. So, go for it, yeah.
I was just going to say, just picking up on the mediocrity point, I think that's a really valid shout. And I think what's happened is Ballard's he's lowered expectations to the point where making a playoff run is seen as that's the limit of our sort of expectations, where that should be the absolute minimum expectation. Let's not forget the Colts are the only AFC team to win a Super Bowl. This is, let's not forget, and it is a terrible division. There's no two way. The Texans are not a good team, and they won that division without us laying a glove on them, and that's the frustrating point for me, I think. But yeah, sorry, go ahead, man.
No, it's all good. One of my questions to you is, how have you found being in what I call quarterback purgatory for the last few years?
I think it's incredibly frustrating, but unfortunately, I think it's looking across the league. It's not uncommon. You can't win without a quarterback. I am so on the fence with Anthony Richardson. It's unbelievable because I still think, and I don't think I'm alone in saying this, that he has all the potential to be an absolute, to use your word, stud in the NFL. There's no and my biggest fear is that Richardson walks into a team like, I don't know, the Raiders or someone like that, and he fulfills that potential, and we're looking back going, what if, whilst we're left with Russell Wilson at sort of 42 on a 1-year contract, bridging until we get the next big thing coming out of college. We laugh, but we laugh through tears.
That's a
reality.
Very
well happen.
Yeah, 100%.
That's
a reality. Yeah.
And so for me, I think, and I actually wrote this for one of my articles at Join the Huddle. 2025 is Ballard, Steichen, Richardson, last chance saloon. Your last orders in last chance saloon. Like this has to be make or break now. So to your point about the quarterback purgatory, I think this year we ride with Richardson again. There's no two ways about it. This year has to be the year. He has to stay healthy. He has to stay on the field. I'd like to see them give him a few more weapons. And I'd really like to see us run. Shane Steichen obviously comes from that Philadelphia offense. Jalen Hurts is a similar type of quarterback to Anthony Richardson. That physical running sort of style. And I'd like to think, with the backs that we have, that we could run a similar offense to that. Utilize the strengths. And I think a tight end is imperative to that kind of offense, as well as sorting out a couple of holes in the O-line. So I'd like to see that sort of going into 2025. If at the end of this year, this next coming season, if we're still sat here going, he could be, he's got all this potential, then I think you're gonna have to call it, and I think that's when you look potentially. Do we look to draft 2026? There are a few names already doing the rounds, aren't there? Potentially. And I think that's I think that's kind of the ace that you keep up your sleeve. The problem we're going to have is I don't think the Colts are going to be bad enough to be picking anywhere near the top of the draft anytime soon. We're never going to be I know we had the year a couple of years back, didn't we, where we absolutely absolutely tanked, which got us Anthony Richardson in the first place. I don't see that happening anytime soon. I could be wrong, but I don't see that. I think we're very much like to your point, mediocrity. We're very middle of the road. We are going to be in that middle of the picking around between sort of 12 to 18 spot again, and that's not going to get you a stud quarterback. So, interesting times.
Cool. Yeah. Harrison, I don't know if you want to build on that, mate. Just touched on Ed's feelings there on quarterback purgatory and how that feels. But yeah, if you've got anything to add, go for it. If not, what's the next one?
The only thing I can sort of add, if I am gonna, because he is our quarterback, so I am gonna go and bat for Anthony Richardson, and I'm gonna bat for him hard because everyone likes to play hindsight. All these experts and pundits, he's gonna be a bust. He's this. He's tapped out of the game. Ugh. Nobody said it was the wrong choice on the day of the draft. Not a single soul. I mean, you might have had some old, proper boomer who likes Will Levis, but nobody said we taken the wrong guy. The Vikings tried selling the farm for Anthony Richardson. So we know the talent's there, and I've seen online he's going working with the same guy who worked with Josh Allen and others. And I'm just like, man, he's 22. And it's like, I'm like, we have thrown this kid to the wolves to save our franchise from mediocrity. When we don't have a tight end. We don't have a tight end. We don't have a linebacker. And I'm just like, there's bigger thing for me for Richardson. Like we say, I agree. This is make or break for him. This is where we see, can he get over being just a freak athlete? He needs to. But we don't have a running back too. How nice would it have been this year? I know he's had an injury. He's essentially had a season-ending injury. But how nice would it have been to have 9 Himes this year? How nice would it have been to have? And Ed, you're going to get used to this because this man is our god on the show. But how nice would it have been to have a Jack Doyle? Just staple guys who do the fundamentals. I think my point is, and I think I brought this up to Nathan and a few of our guys, is he's never going to be Phillip Rivers. So why on earth are we trying to make him Phillip Rivers? It's baffled me since day one. When we got good, I'll say good. When we started seeing his potential, Shane Steichen was no longer afraid of him getting hit. And that's a scary place to be with Anthony.
Yeah, I agree. I think when he came back from the benching, which was a bizarre scenario in itself, and you could tell that Steichen had drawn up some specific sort of schemes using his legs more. And, he basically, I mean, how many clips have we got of him just literally running over DB? Like, you could make a YouTube reel of him just absolutely trucking into people. And like you say, it's a scary prospect when he gets running. So yeah, I'm with you. I'm still firmly in that I want him to succeed, but I'm on the fence with if it's going to happen. That's where I'm a bit concerned, if that makes sense.
Cool. So interesting points on the draft earlier. Tyler Warren is absolutely the consensus kind of mock draft pick for Indianapolis right now. I wanted to ask the two of you your opinion on a theoretical scenario that I believe is very likely going to happen.
Don't say it.
So, it's draft night. We've all stayed up late. We're all really tired. We've watched superstars get drafted, and the Colts are on the clock. And the card's turned in, and it's an O-lineman. Thoughts?
I'll go first because I'm going to keep it short and sweet. With his position, as hot as it is, I don't think Chris Ballard can. I just don't think he can. I think if he did, I think there would be like literal shirt burnings, like that scene on draft day. There'd be people like with scarecrows and just like, I think he would be chased out of Indy alongside Ryan Grigson. And that's why I don't think he can. But I'll let Ed go into his point because it's probably a bit more nuanced than just outright Ryan.
No, I don't think there's anybody that will to build on your point. I don't think he can, because I don't think there'll be any worth taking at that stage of that. You know, last year there was a bit of a freak class, wasn't there, in terms of both sort of quarterbacks, receivers, and O-linemen. I've had a look. I've not done a huge amount. I have done a mock draft already. You know, guilty. I know it's only January. But I can't see any that might fall that far. So I'd be more concerned as to who it would be, if I'm being honest with you, because I think there's teams ahead of us that are going to need it.
Yeah.
But if it happens, I mean, it would be one of those, wouldn't it? Like, it'd be like the AD Mitchell thing again. I just kind of go, oh, really? Like, yeah, I wouldn't be happy. Let's put it that way. We've got so many needs. I do think the O-line needs work, by the way, but it's down the list. You know, it's not first round worthy, not in my opinion.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. There's some, you know, mock drafts that have come out this week that have, you know, mocked Ohio State's Josh Simmons,
yeah.
Indianapolis. And I think with Braden Smith being so, you know, we don't know where he is, and it sounds like a horrible situation for Braden.
Yeah,
so,
it does.
You know, thoughts go out to him wherever he's going through. But, you know, we would be losing one of the highest paid right tackles in the league. If Smith is gone, the Colts save 20 million in cap space, which is interesting. When we've got Ballard saying that he wants to change his free agency philosophy, but on a last chance saloon gig with a quarterback who must stay healthy, I don't know how I feel about leaving the right-hand side of the line unproven. Do you know what I mean? I'm not totally adverse to an O-lineman being picked if Smith retires.
Can I... My sort of counter to that, and I think I fully get where you're coming from, Nathan, because as Colts fans over the last years, let's run over our quarterback. I mean, we don't have to because it's horrendous, but Carson Wentz, statue. Phillip Rivers, statue. Minshew, a deer in headlights, but pretty much a statue. He's a player, and this sound, I'm going to hate myself because this sounds very Grigson, but these are players who needed a right tackle. Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor, I don't think right tackle needs to be a premium because of the Reed option for us with him in. I really don't. Go on, Ed.
No, I was going to say, I hear what you're both saying. I think it's really interesting points. I mean, the 20 million in cap space, I can't wait for that to be spent on sort of 4 different washed up cornerbacks who won't actually add any value, but, you know, that's a separate conversation. What about Matt Gonsalves? I don't know if I've said his name right there, who obviously we drafted last year, and he stepped in and I thought did quite a decent job. Obviously, he moved around a bit, but you know, there's a part of me kind of, I don't want to sound too like Ballard, we like our guys. That's not what I'm saying. But you know,
it's like he's been here before Harrison, right?
But you know, going into year 2, I thought he showed potential last year and could potentially step into that right tackle position. You know, obviously the interior on that side is going to need some looking at as well, isn't there? I don't know what's happening with Fries. I don't know if he's, you know, how bad that injury is and if he's going to come back. I thought he was a miss, to be honest, as I'm sure you both did as well once he went down. But yeah, like you said, Nathan, I think I saw I saw somebody put something about, there was an argument to be made about Colts taking an O-line man because obviously it's a more premium position and they cost more in the long run, and that's potentially why would make sense doing it. Yeah. Let's see. Who knows? To be honest with you, like I say, who knows what we're going to do? That's the fun of it. Literally, who knows?
I think the only fan base in football recently who knows what's going to happen on draft night is the Philadelphia Eagles, because Howie Roseman drafts what his team needs every single year, and I would kill for a GM like that. You know, look at the way he handled it this year. Quinion Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, secondary sorted. Do you know what I mean? And they're in the dance. They've made it the whole way. I'm not saying they've made it because of those 2 draft picks, but those draft picks have even become public enough to get nicknames, and to be, featured in lots of different coverages. So yeah, I have to get that off my chest. Sorry, I'm in envy of Howie Roseman.
I think it's a valid point. Like I say, how can you be that good every year and still draft that well? It's not fair.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. I agree.
So, moving on to I say moving on, we've got nothing to move on to because we're not in the playoff. But sort of looking at the Colts as an overall, and I think this is interesting where you come in now, Ed, because with regard, I don't want to flog a dead horse with the Colts, but with regards to tap out gate, I hate calling it that. Me and Nathan sit on different but similar sides of the fence, and it seemed a mess from the moment it happened to the moment after the benching when Richardson started. And my sort of take was, I mean, for one, we both sort of agreed you can't do that. What was your take on the whole situation unfolding of just like, what?
Yeah, I think that, when you watched it, you saw it live and he's coming out, and your first reaction when Richardson comes out of the game is, isn't it? You're thinking, oh no, not like, what is it? Like, how, we'll see you next Christmas kind of thing, because how long are you going to be out for now? So when it all kind of transpired, I was a little bit sort of taken aback, because you're right, professional athletes, don't care what sport it is, you can't say you're tired. I'm just sorry, you can't. Tired is, we all live a life so far removed from that of a professional athlete that we can't imagine what their life is like. The only thing that we understand is being tired. And unfortunately, that doesn't wash in the real world. I'm tired every single day. I'm going to phone my boss and say, I'm not logging on today, mate. I'm tired. Do you know what I mean? That just doesn't happen. My perspective on it was, you've talked about his age. He's 22. It was naive. It was a naive, inexperienced kid who's made a mistake. And that's all it was to me. You learn from it. 22 years old and you're holding down a quarterback position in the NFL. Come on, like that's a big deal. I mean, I can't at 22. I mean, it was a long time ago now, unfortunately for me. But, having that, it was nothing but naivety. There was a comment he made, and it made me think of it. You mentioning it that now, my thought process, and it's triggered my sort of thought process at the time. Do you remember pre-season, we had a game against the Cincinnati Bengals? I can't remember what the score was now. I think we lost. I can't actually remember. We might have won. Doesn't matter. The point I was going to make was, after the game, Richardson, he threw a touchdown, but he also threw a pick. And after the game, they interviewed him and said, how do you think you did? And he said, pretty good. I threw 2 touchdowns, which was an off-the-cuff kind of joke, And I thought, okay, yes, it's quite funny, relatively. Maybe something we'd say, he threw 2 touchdowns. But I thought, is that something that I want my quarterback to be saying? And I thought that maybe just showed a little bit of naivety. Do you know what I mean? It's like, yes, look, it's a preseason game. It doesn't matter ultimately. And it's kind of making light of a situation. But, throwing a pick is not a good thing. Do you know what I mean? And it just, to me, and then the tap out, it just to me is someone who's naive and still learning to be a professional. And obviously when he got benched, and then, Shane Steichen, who went into this MI5 secret code service and not telling everybody what was going on. And, he needs media training in the off season, by the way. That's a separate conversation. I mean, flipping heck. What he says, just like take with a massive pinch of salt, because whatever he says, something else will come out a week later. But the whole benching, and then it transpires. I think it was DeForest Buckner said, I've signed an extension because I believe in you and I need to see more from you. And and I think that's essentially what it boils down to. This is a kid that needs to learn to be a professional. And that was my kind of take. He's made a mistake. He didn't need to be hung out to dry as badly as he was, in my opinion. And we move on and we forget about it. Unfortunately, I think it's going until he consistently puts performances together on the pitch. That's what he's going to be known for. So it's up to him now to change that narrative.
Yeah, and like I say, I don't need to ask Dave because we talked about it for weeks and weeks and weeks. But I think my sort of equivalence is, and I like to compare back to English football, and me being an Arsenal fan, the equivalent is Aaron Ramsdale coming out on a podcast and saying, I can't concentrate for a full 90 minutes. And you're like, and you're like,
hear that.
What?
Yeah.
Well, you're meant to. And it's just, it was, I think you're right. I think you've actually summed it up better than I could have, or better than what I thought of. It was just naivety on all three bases. Moving on then, I don't even want to talk about Joe Flacco because fuck me, get him out of fucking Indianapolis. But so moving on, Taylor has the drop, which I think is a bigger and worse mistake than the tap out personally.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Do you feel this? I suppose Ed, I'll go to you first, Ed, and then Nathan. Do you feel this season has been? You mentioned a thing like we've not seen progression from Anthony Richardson, which we all wanted to see, which we failed. Do you think the bigger question is, has this been a failure of leadership from the veterans than it has been naivety from the rookies?
Good question. I think there's a mixture of both, to be honest with you. I mean, obviously, we've had the very well publicised media fallout, haven't we, with some of our sort of veteran players, which hasn't helped. They should know better. Jonathan Taylor's mistake, I mean, that's just I don't want to use the word inexcusable, but it kind of is really for a player of his experience. Dropping the ball before you've crossed. I mean, come on, man! Like that's so like. So yeah, I think there's an element of both, if you want my honest opinion. I think it's all kind of knitted together with a very naive head coach who's still in his second year and doesn't strike. I like Shane Steichen, by the way. I think he's a very intelligent football man. You can tell he's got. I think sometimes he's too clever for his own good, though. Like he draws up plays, and I don't think he's got the players to do it. He does these plays, and then he tries to run it with our offense, and they're like running into each other and stuff. And it's like, so I think it's a combination of sort of not rookie head coach because it's 2 years in now, but a young head coach. Yes, I think a lot of the veterans, some notable names excluded. I think Buckner showed up big time last year. I think Kenny Moore called it out, didn't he? He was quite happy to call out the problems. But yeah, and then I think we didn't get the production out of AD Mitchell that we all wanted, did we? Let's be honest. That was a bit of a he's had a Latu, I think, will come good, and Richardson, yeah. I do think the two guys we drafted for the O-line were good, though. I think when Bortolini came in for Ryan Kelly, I thought there wasn't much of a drop off there. I think that's our guy for the future, in my opinion. So yeah, I think it's a mixture of all three, Harrison. If you want my honest opinion, I don't think many players come out of this year, or anybody comes out this year with a huge amount of looking good. If you catch my drift, I mean. Steichen came out after and said we're close, and then Ballard just basically killed him by saying we're not close. Close is losing in the final play of the Super Bowl. We're 8 and 9. We're not close. So it's kind of like, well, you got your head coach and your general manager with two different messages to the media. Like, what does that tell you? What does that tell you,
Nathan?
Yeah, I think it's a complete failure by management. Ballard kind of admitted that in his press conference. Surprise, fair play, he did take the heat. And, I think Bal's very good at doing that. He created an environment of complacency, mediocrity, lack of competition, and just we've definitely seen regression from Richardson. I believe we've seen regression from Shane Steichen too. Some plays or some games, there's complete drop-offs in the second quarter. His opening scripts are chef's kiss, and then second quarters, there's just complete drop-offs from all personnel. Look, I don't think the Colts are close at all. I think the record inflates the talent on this roster right now. I think we'll talk about next year's schedule on a different episode, so I won't touch too much on it right now. But if you like horror stories, go have a look at our away games next year. I cannot see this team winning an away game next season. And I'm not being negative. I've had 9 years of pain. We have had 9 years of pain. I don't think Indy's going to win a game on the road next year, and I'll happily be proven wrong. But I'm setting myself up to really not cry every time we go on the road.
Yeah. So I've got a light-hearted question now to cheer Nathan up.
I feel like he needs an arm around his shoulder. I feel you. Trust it. I feel you.
But no, so these are just fun questions. They don't mean anything. But okay, I'll ask you both once. And what you get a chance to get rid of one player this year, like no repercussions. You're gone, mate. You're not get that meme where the player can't get back into the building. Go on, Nathan. I'll start you. I know mine.
Mine is Franklin.
Ed?
I was going to go exactly the same way. I know he's Pro Bowl, but no.
And and that's free for free because I mean we don't need to go into lots of bolts of it, but I find it mental that he's still part of our roster, if I'm being honest. But I'm guessing we'll see what Lou does with the roster. And I suppose I've got a bit of a question, and this is a point I like to reiterate to Nathan after he's listened to me bang on about it for about an hour and a half every Thursday night. But
go on.
When you've got players doing podcasts in the middle of the season, is their priority playing? When you've got Michael Pittman, who I love, coming in with a back injury, who has a working farm in the middle of the season, is playing his priority. I need a coach to come in and say, or a GM to come in and say, no, you're injured. Why? Well, you was mucking out your horses. Well, you're not getting paid. You've insulted a Colts Ring of Honor punter of the decade Hall of Famer on national telly. And then you go in doing fake handshakes and what are you like? Do you think there needs to be a bit more accountability from the GM? Like, who should be there? Like, right?
Yeah, I think that's the key word, and I think Nathan touched on it earlier with the mediocrity thing, and I think that's where accountability starts at the top, doesn't it? It's a culture, and that's the word that we keep hearing at the moment. And I think listening to Lou Anarumo's press conference, he said he touched on the word culture, and he said, obviously, I can't talk about it because I've not been in the building, which is a fair comment. But he said culture tends to come out when things aren't going well, which again is a fair comment. So if things aren't going well in life, what you do is you look at the reasons why it's not going well, and like you say, that's where the accountability piece comes in. So are there too many off-field distractions? Is that part of the problem? We're not in the building. It could very well have an impact on it. But I think the key word there is accountability. Absolutely. But that starts at the top. But when you've got a GM who hasn't won a division in his time with the team, let's be honest with you, the worst division in football. There's no point dressing it up. It is the worst division in football.
Yeah,
there's no powerhouse in our division, is there? We haven't got a Buffalo Bills or a Kansas City or or the AFC North, which is just a dogfight, which geographically, there's not could happen. There's no powerhouse in our division, and we've not won it. And you watch the Jags implode every other year. The Titans, I don't know what's going on over there. And as I said earlier, the Texans won that division without even having to get out of second gear, really. So where's the accountability within the building? That's the question, isn't it, I suppose? And that starts at the top, in my opinion. So let's see. Actions speak louder than words.
Yeah. And my sort of last... two last questions. It's never a last one on this show. But my second to last question is, we all have a bit of a cult hero. I mean, for ourselves, mine is Sam Ellinger. I believe the Americans say it, but Ellinger, that's how we say it. I love Sammy Slinger. I suppose Nathan's got his own.
Yeah, absolutely. My cult hero in the last 10 years is number 84, Jack Doyle.
Yeah, it's Jack Doyle is God. And Ed?
Do you know, it's a good question. I don't think you put me on the spot a little bit. I haven't really got a sort of. I do everything you've just said. I do like Pittman. I've always had a soft spot for him, and I have actually got his jersey. So I suppose it would have to go with him. But I haven't got someone that a player I do. I think I can't remember his name now. The punter Sanchez.
Rigoberto Sanchez.
I like him. I think he's. I know punters don't generally get. Well, they do with the Colts, obviously, because of a rather famous one. But I've always thought he's pretty accurate, and I like that part of the game. I know it's a bit of a unloved part of the game because they don't really like but I quite often take my boy over the field near where we live, and we boot the ball sort of backwards and forwards to each other. So I've always kind of had a soft spot. But I'd say Pittman Jr. to put me on the spot, but I hadn't ever really thought about it, to be fair.
That's all right. I mean,
that's cool.
Rigoberto Sanchez has he set the franchise record for net average per punt or something like that?
But he's just so damn accurate as well with it, which is really quite a difficult thing to do. So a cult hero might be a bit of a stretch, but I do quite respect him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and my last one, and I think I've asked Nathan this, so I'll just leave it for you, Ed. If you're going to build a five-a-side team, essentially, so you've got your quarterback, wide receiver, tight end. God, I'm missing one.
Yeah.
Running back. You usually ask for two wide receivers.
Oh yeah, two wide receivers.
Past,
TE running back. Okay.
And it's just the field is yours to build your team all time if you want.
I'm going to keep it. I'm going to just I suppose I'm on the spot. I'm going to go with players that have played this year. So I'm going to go with the players that I would be going sort of MVP. So we did our awards at Join the Huddle. So I voted for Lamar Jackson as my MVP. I think outstanding. Running back would have to then be Saquon. Sorry, JT, but Saquon Barkley's a freak. Let's be honest with you. Tight end, the guy that I wish we drafted last year. Unfortunately, the Raiders beat us to him. Brock Bowers. And then my two receivers. I'm going to go with a Colts player. I'm going to put Alec Pierce in there for the deep ball, just to represent to represent Indy there. And what was it? He was something like ridiculous, wasn't it? 22 yards per reception or something. I think it was ridiculous. Yeah. And then who would I go for my final receiver? I don't know, maybe something just to mix up a bit of fun, like a George Pickens, just for laughs, just because it would blow the whole thing up. No, I'm joking. I don't know. My mind has gone totally blank. Let's think let's go Amon-Ra St. Brown. I quite like him. He's good in the blocking game as well. So he could help with the run game with Saquon and Lamar just tearing it up in the backfield. Yeah, so that would be my 2024 dream team. I've kind of modified it a little bit.
Yeah.
Nathan, have you got any more questions?
I don't have any more questions, but I'd love to do a shout out just to end the show. So shout out to Phil, who runs Join the Huddle. For anybody watching in future, please follow Join the Huddle. I'm actually in a fantasy league with Phil. Shout out to the Wales Dynasty Fantasy Boys. It's a fantasy league that's been going for many years. And yeah, me and Phil battle it out every year in the Wales Dynasty Fantasy League. So please support him, support Ed, support all the writers on there. And
Thanks,
let's get following.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Ed, I want to thank you for taking time to join us. It's always nice to speak to more and more Colts fans. And before we let you go, I just want to get your maybe one thing you're excited about for the upcoming season and one thing you're very wary of for the upcoming season.
I'll start with the wary, and you said you're going to do an episode on it, is the schedule next year, because like everyone, I've had a look, that scares me. What I'm excited for is the Colts coming to Europe, coming to Germany. So fingers crossed. I wasn't successful last time, but I have registered and I've downloaded my German app. So with any luck this year, fingers crossed, I'm excited to potentially be able to get out there. But yeah, just as well, before we go, just want to say massive thanks for having me on. I've thoroughly enjoyed chatting to some proper, real, knowledgeable, good Colts fans. I've really enjoyed it tonight, fellas. Thanks for having me on. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Nathan's all right too. Nathan, we'll just sort of end out the show because I think that's been a good show, and I really don't want to drag it on too much longer. I'd just like to again thank Ed for coming on. It's been fun. Just your quick final recap then on what have we got, because it's a very, we are on a knife edge right now at the Indianapolis Colts.
It really does feel like it, and I think I've been very negative tonight, or I'm being perceived as being very negative tonight. Usually I am the positive one when we hash it out on Thursdays. I've had so much time to reflect, and I basically haven't missed a minute of the playoff games, and you watch them and Indy is just so far away. I mean, it's unbelievable. And do you know what? Respect to Chris Ballard. I've not said that line all year, for saying it as it is.
Yeah.
Because I love the point Ed made, right? Shane going to the podium and saying that we're close. Me and you laughed about it. It was a page out of the Frank Reich book. And I'm so glad that Ballard addressed that publicly, that we are not a good football team right now. And look, we've got to be optimistic, right? And genuinely, I'm looking forward to Berlin. I'm 100% going to go, and I really hope that we can take UK Colts fans abroad and get the boys together. I'm sure if Ed's going, we could meet up with Ed.
Yeah.
I think that's something to be really excited about. But do you know what? Weirdly, if it doesn't work out, man, I'm really excited for the next chapter.
Yeah.
Because you hit the nail on the head about 10 minutes ago when you discussed complacency in play. We need a GM that, for example, is going to watch the tape of EJ Speed this season and cut that guy.
Yeah.
Cut that guy out of this football team, because we've talked about it 100 times, right? But that's a player, for example, should never ever have been on the roster in
No.
week 18. So yeah, we are on a knife edge. We've got a huge free agency approaching. Ballard's committed publicly to changing his stance. Will he? We don't know. I think the draft's crucial.
Yeah.
I like Xavier Watts out of Notre Dame.
Okay.
I think he's a second round talent, and if the Colts can come out of draft night with Tyler Warren or Malaki Starks in round 1 and Xavier Watts in round 2, I'm going to be a happy man. Let me tell you. So, yeah, I mean, it's draft season. I'm sure we'll have a lot of fun with it, mate. But to end the show, who do you think's going to win the bowl?
Oh, good place to end. Who do I want, or who do I think?
Who do you want? Let's go with want.
I want the Commanders to win it.
Nice choice. Yeah.
I one, because it's an underdog story. We all love it. But I think if the Commanders go and win it, I think that heaps the language on it, a shit ton of pressure onto Ballard.
I agree.
A shit ton. And I think if the Commanders go and win it, I think he then has no choice but to go and spend in free agency. Who do I think? I think it's time for the Andrew Luck protege. I think it's Josh Allen's time, and if from the AFC side, I'm hoping they beat the Chiefs, because I'm sick of watching Mahomes get every call under the sun, which is just ridiculous. But yeah, who do I want to? The Commanders. Who do I think? The Bills. What about yourself?
I'd like the Bills to win the bowl, purely because it proves that you can draft absolute rockets that you can develop into champions.
Yeah.
And the league and this sport needs to showcase that more. When Allen's year 1, he had something like a 53% completion rate.
Very similar to Richardson.
Super similar.
Yeah.
And now he's, top 2, maybe, he's top 2 now with Lamar not in there, quarterback in the league. So yeah, I'd like Buffalo to win, just because the AFC needs new power. Kansas can't keep winning, and I just don't want to. I love Super Bowl night, and I love the spectacle of it, and I really don't want to watch a reffing crew treat Mahomes with special treatment on Super Bowl night too.
Nathan, that's been a good show. I think that's a good place to end it. We might do a bit of a Super Bowl week, a bit of a Super Bowl media week. Get a few guests on of the teams who are going into it. So like I say, thanks for everyone's watching, everyone who joined, especially Paul from UK Bengals and Ed from Colts GB, who writes for Join the Huddle. I'm sure we'll see more of him over the coming weeks and months and seasons. See you all later.
Bye, guys.